go to this computer. Fantastic. Good evening, all. Fantastic turnout tonight. We've currently got 20 on the call. I'm sure we'll get a few of the late stragglers as we usually do. So, fantastic turnout. Tonight, we're joined by Sean. Privileged to get Sean on board. He's been a valued member in the school group for a little time, and he's here to part some words of wisdom. He's been nominated by popular demand to come in for a Q&A. So, as you requested, here he is. And now he wishes he put the vest on.
I can set mine off. Hang on, no.
I'm going to put my I'm going to put my t-shirt
There you
on.
go. You can't see because the image in there. There you go.
I don't feel so bad. I don't feel so bad. I have literally just come in from the gym. So I went to the gym at 5:20 by the time I got there and got back. So I've literally just signed in and set up. So any questions for Sean, please pop them in the chat with a QQQ. Joe coming in. Sean, if you'd like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and I'm going to turn my screen off for 2 seconds and put a t-shirt on, and I'll let you chat away for 2 secs. I will be back shortly.
Well, some of the guys know I'm basically just an old guy that's been around a long time and done a lot of things. So, training wise, I've pretty much done everything from athletic perspective, playing rugby, triathlons, things like that. Experienced similar things to Richard, where I actually put on body fat while doing a lot of running and cycling and swimming. I actually got fatter doing that. Went back to weight training and basically decided when I changed the food, which I've been carb athlete all my life, from playing rugby right the way through to being about 50 years old, health issues, all that sort of stuff. Again, a lot of parallels with Richard's story. I decided to change my diet, which then meant that I decided to look at everything else as well, including my training. Bearing in mind, I've been doing it and coaching people for since I was 19 years old, thinking I knew everything, thinking that everything I did was the industry standard as to what it should be and why it should work. And found out that most of it were bullshit, basically. A bit like with the diet and the food. So I just went back to basics. I actually went to uni at 59. Did a degree in sport and exercise science. Managed to pass that with honours. Got the highest mark in the group, which were really good considering I'm dyslexic. And on the spectrum, I would have been classed as that now. And really just changed my whole approach to actual muscle growth rather than a sarcoplasmic pump, which is what people try and get when they go to the gym. So they'll pump up at the gym, load up with carbs, salt, creatine, citrulline malate, all these other pump stuff. And what they'll do is they'll blow up, their arms will grow at an inch on Friday nights, so they look good in the t-shirts. And then come Saturday, Sunday morning, it's all disappeared and they start the process again. Whereas if you try and stimulate myofibrillar hypertrophy, you end up in a position where your muscles get bigger. They won't pump up the same. I think Richard's explained that before. They don't actually pump the same as what you would get in a carb fuel state. But what you do is you increase strength and you increase muscle size. So from that perspective, that's what I did when I was at uni. I got the physiology and the anatomy science behind what I knew in an anecdotal sense that would work. But then also got the science behind it as well. This actually culminated, it actually started with a guy who were on the same course as me. He was the other old guy, but he was only 30 odd. I was 59. And he had MS. And he was given a program that he was supposed to do, because obviously for neurological conditions, weight training is fantastic. It's fantastic for everything. Everybody should do it all through the life. The bigger the muscles are, the bigger your fuel tanks are, therefore you have less response to any glucose or type 2 diabetes issues and things like that. But he really struggled, and he were off probably 30 odd days just in the first two terms of uni in the first year. So I redesigned his program, went back to reducing central nervous system fatigue. That was the primary aim initially. So we cut down the reps, we got rid of the junk reps, we changed his routine, we changed his whole approach. It wasn't 5 sets of 10, 5 sets of 12. We got into the stimulating reps much quicker, which then meant that he recovered much quicker. And in the next two terms, he were only off for 1 day. And as people know, like with Richard with his migraines and things like that, if you end up with something like MS, it used to lay him flat for 3 days, and it wasn't good. So we managed to get rid of that. And the only time he actually had one bad event was when he went to Amsterdam and decided to partake of all their exotic chemicals and things while he were there. So when he came back, that's when he had another relapse. But that was just for 1 day. So he even recovered quicker from that. So that's the basis of the training program that I use and I run, and I run it with quite a few people. And that's what it literally is. It's all about stimulating the muscle with the least amount of repetitions, but also programming in the correct rest periods in between, so that your ATP recovery is improved, which then means that the reps that you're actually doing are the ones that are actually making muscles grow. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. There's a lot more as well, but I'll let
Fantastic.
people fire away rather than me
Yeah.
talk.
Brilliant stuff, Sean. And I think there are so many misconceptions in regards to muscle building, hypertrophy, athletic performance. Let's let Helen in. I was in the gym yesterday, and the the gym that I go to it's a locally run like council gym, and most of the people who work there don't look like they are fitness. Some of them do. Most of them don't look like they work out. And I've always been a big believer in practice what you preach.
Yeah,
And on the counter, they have lots of products for sale. The products are chocolate bars and sweets. And I'm thinking, even at a basic level, whether we talk about glucose or carbs, we know that these sweet treats are they're not good for us. So in a facility in which you're trying to teach people to be fit and healthy, why are these products there? So that was the first thing. When I walked in yesterday, the owner, not the owner, sorry, the manager of the gym was there, and he had a tub of protein open. I didn't know at the time it was. I think it was his protein. I thought that they were selling it, and my instant reaction was, I shouldn't have said this, and I regretted it after. But I said, "Oh, I bet it's full of shit." And he, like, quite aggressively turned around and said, and while storming off, but it gets you big. And because he knows what I do, and he stormed off
yeah,
and like slamming doors, and I thought, right, I clearly offended him. I realized after that it was his protein, so sort of he probably took it a bit personal. So next time I see him, I'm going to apologize because I didn't mean to offend him by saying that. But my point to this is that the protein that he had was full of shit,
yeah.
full of chemicals, anti-nutrients, incredibly high in carbohydrate, and the community in the gym is so heavily committed to carbs building muscle. Carbs have zero impact on building muscle when adequate protein is consumed. So providing we consume enough protein to elicit that response, that mTOR activation, which is done via leucine, carbs do not further increase muscle protein synthesis, but what does further increase it is fat. So protein with fat further increases muscle protein synthesis. And these are studies that I've mentioned a number of times when I've been presenting on athletic performance. I've been to the gym today, and everybody there, with their sugary treats and their bars and their carbs, and they're either like this or they're, and I don't mean that to offend anybody, but it's
I was that person, so
so was I.
I got to that. So
But it's so so hard and incredibly disconcerting when, I came away from bodybuilding. I had 5 years away from resistance training. As you guys know, I've had a couple of months back, and I'm gaining muscle, hand over fist. I don't look the way that I did there, but in a vest, I'm 7.5% body fat. I did an in body on Monday, 7.5% body fat. I've got the D curve, very pronounced D curve on the in body, so it's an athletic shape. Very, very low body fat. My visceral fat is 1, and my dry protein, I'm got it. It was high anyway, considering I haven't done any resistance training for so long, and I'm in the gym training, and it's just the proof is in the proof is in the steak, and I'm telling people, but they still. Do you find it difficult when you see this in the gym and you work with clients and they keep coming back to carb and they keep coming back to,
Yeah,
how do you deal
absolutely.
with that?
It's really difficult. I mean, I noticed it more at uni. I mean, I've just answered a question about the nutrition side at uni and the fact that everybody's pushing vegan, and yet there's all these chocolate bars, and nobody can do a workout without a monster. And yet they're not even working out at 20-30% of capacity. So, they're using energy, or they're taking in all this crap, and it's a miracle thing that they're taking in, but they're not actually working to stimulate muscle growth anyway. So it's that kind of, I don't know, it's like an illusion. And they can see, they can see other people, either people I'm working with, or myself, as being 60 odd years old, and lifting more now than I did when I finished playing pro rugby at 35, which I never thought were possible, because obviously you lose everything as you get older, supposedly. But you only lose it if you stop weight training. Literally, that's the thing. And the first thing to go is your backside and your legs, and then everything else just follows on from that. So you end up with less area in which to store glycogen, more goes into your blood, blah blah blah. Everything increases, type 2 diabetes and everything else. So it's difficult. I mean, as you said, you see guys, which I was, 350 pound, 50% body fat. I became that guy, and I'm walking around with all these calories, well, not calories, energy on my body, thinking, well, I'm training in a gym. I need fuel to train, but I'm carrying so much of it. It's just then teaching people how to access it. I think that's one of the big killers, especially when people are healing, with the fat and the protein. You can get to a stage once that's got to a certain level where you then have to decide, well, I now have to try and access my own body fat, for that energy. And even if you access it, you then have to utilize it before it gets reabsorbed. So it's that kind of area where I'm looking into more now. I'd love to be 7% body fat. I've never had I've been single figure body fat, even when I played rugby, and I had to put more on, purely to stop getting injured.
Yeah.
But that is, I've never had the commitment to go to that level. I might do it. I still might do it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see
There's
how
a
we go.
challenge. Yeah, it's,
Yeah, yeah,
the interesting thing with that was that, and again, this comes back to these incremental steps, isn't it? These incremental journeys. The first competition I ever competed in. My body fat was quite high, and I could not break through this. But then every year I would compete a number of times, and I would perform a number of cuts, which isn't healthy, by the way, doing
no,
yo-yoing back and forth. But every time I managed to break through the plateau and get a little bit leaner and a little bit leaner. And I've managed to, because we operate between this upper and lower limit. If you just eat whatever you wanted to, if it was just protein and fat, you would reach an upper limit, and you would, and we all see this within the group. Our body weight fluctuates. Mine fluctuates 5 to 7 pound a day,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
food in transit, water, volume, so on and so forth. But I'll always go back to roughly there's always there's an average that I'm
yeah.
teetering around. And I think if you are strict carnivore, it's very difficult to break one or two of these things either way. You can pull the levers, you can break through a plateau, or you can gain more fat or muscle or whatever. There are other levers to pull. But every time you do that, once you maintain that for a number of months or weeks, that becomes your new norm, doesn't it? And I think with me, it's been a case of so many years of cutting to be low single figure that my top is like 7.5. I genuinely thought I was around 9. I didn't
Yeah.
have a clue that I was anywhere near 7.5, and I feel quite chunky, like around my midsection. This is chunky for me, so I'm on a mission now to strip a few pounds, ready for summer for the summer bod.
Yeah. Well,
It'll be
that's
in,
it. That's the same. It's a seasonal, for me, I do it seasonally. I never cut in winter. My body fat's the highest in winter. And then I basically graduate that down as my training ramps up. So it's literally, it's never the same. It's always a progression up, progression down. The weights are fairly constant. My protein intake is pretty much constant.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
All I utilize is the fat because it's an easy metric to just alter and keep everything else the same. Because my actual lean body weight can be probably around 235, something like that. So I just work off that and then just move everything up and down. If I feel as I'm gaining a little bit, I'll just knock it back a bit.
yeah.
Um, but I never had the same bit like you guys were saying. I've mentioned a couple of times that I don't eat the same every day. It depends what I'm doing. So I eat relative to what expenditure I'm actually going to be. If I'm not doing anything for 3 hours, then why do I need to eat? And same again.
Yeah.
Just keep using that 3 to 4 hour window, which is as you say with the mTOR response and things like that. I do it slightly differently to you because you use, but I do incorporate, the one meal evening time if I'm specifically doing it for something. But when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is activate mTOR,
Yeah.
which is HMB plus amino acids, literally to create a spike at the outset, which I then, because I train at about 2 o'clock on an afternoon. So I'll get 2 spikes in, then I get the mechanical spike with the training,
Yeah.
and then I
And then
feed
another.
that afterwards, and have my big meal at night, which then takes me through. And then obviously next morning, I'm effectively doing, like this. It's why I've been interested with the dry fasting as well, because I've always done a similar kind of thing, where on a morning I'm up at 4:30, get down to the gym about 5, and I'll go doing fasted cardio, just on a treadmill walking. I don't do anything more than that, just on an incline. But then I remain fasted for probably till 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, and I'll do that every other day when I'm training fully. I knock the cardio back during winter, but I always have a baseline that I worked at.
Yeah.
But it's like you were saying with the studies as well. I mean, that's the one thing that the uni's given me is the ability to critically analyze studies. And
And most of them are
I'll always
shoddy,
be
and
very,
they most of them are
oh,
shoddy, which
I mean,
is
when you look
at
at
best.
something simple like a bicep curl, what is a bicep curl? Everybody does it wrong. I mean, literally every single person does a bicep curl wrong. They don't activate the biceps, they activate brachialis or brachioradialis muscles, whichever. They're not stood in a scapular plane. It's literally totally wrong. But they always measure hypertrophy and say, oh, hypertrophy does this. And we've measured it with an ultrasound. Ultrasound cannot measure hypertrophy. It physically can't do it. It's like having a balloon filled full of water and oil. How much oil's in there? How much water's in there? You've no idea. An ultrasound can't pick that up. So they all say they just use a measurement to say, oh, it's got bigger, so therefore it is muscle hypertrophy. But it could be sarcoplasmic swelling. They've literally got no idea, but they use it. People then use that studies to reinforce either selling a product or selling a process.
Yeah, one
And it's,
hundred
as I say,
percent.
it's all bullshit.
Yeah, it is 100%.
Yeah,
And it's I mean this is the confusion when it comes to carb, because when you do eat carb, that's what it does, fill the muscle with glycogen,
Yeah,
and for every 1 gram, it's going to pull 3 or 4 grams of water. So it does give the illusion that you are bigger. It does give the illusion that you have built muscle. It does add leverage, I believe, so it can
yeah.
allow you to lift more. But there are other ways that we can do that, and when you adapt, we do this through other mechanisms when we fully adapt, which we can get into. But there are a couple of calls here, Sean. So a couple of
Okay.
calls, a couple of questions,
I
not
know
calls.
which are in between ourselves. Sorry about
I know. Podcast didn't come in. That'll be
that.
fantastic. Let's do that. So Laura says, do you eat or take anything before the gym or straight after, as in your typical pre-workout or post-workout?
Yes. Literally, that is the main focus of what I do when I'm going to the gym. I will always have protein, probably about an hour, 2 hours before, and then I'll depending. I don't use pre-workouts all the time. I only use them occasionally. Usually, if it's a heavy leg day, I'll put a pre-workout in, and then I'll just literally use amino acids and electrolytes, your electrolytes, which are that actually nice tasting, even with the, you know,
Yes,
well, people say
yeah,
they're not, but they are the best ones I've tasted. So um, that side of it is literally amino acids, and I'm not too bothered about an after a post workout feed, but usually I will have something within an hour, 2 hours. But that's just because of timings of having my usual evening meal. So um, it's all based on that. I don't really specifically like I used to do when I was gulping down anabolic window, blah blah blah. I just time it relative to the 4 hour windows, and that's pretty much all I do. It's and it's enough. As long as you're providing the nutrients. And the other one I use quite a lot is HMB because it signals the body not to break down existing muscle tissue.
yeah,
So you've got the building blocks with the amino acids. They absorb so fast that you know what I'll tend to do is mix the proteins. So I'll use essential amino acids on a morning specifically during training because they're available so quickly. But I'll also then use whey isolate, which actually has a much longer absorption period. So I'll tend to use that to get me through to the next feeding point. So it's just literally protein relative to timing. That's it, and nothing more complicated, really.
yeah, 100%. HMB, which is the metabolite of leucine. So that's what
Yeah,
leucine breaks down to. When I was bodybuilding, I preferenced the leucine over the HMB. Oh, Nigel coming in. I was torn between the benefits of one or the other. I found like research on HMB was like some was well for it as being the next
yeah.
best thing, and others was so I knew that the leucine was working. Oh, somebody else coming in. Oh, we are popular show tonight. Have to get you on again. So I stuck with the leucine, and I mean that worked really well. But it's essentially just saving that step, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because the HMB is the metabolite. So
yeah.
anybody interested in leucine or HMB, that's what that is. Laura's also said, have you noticed much of a change in building muscle from being a carb athlete to not eating carbs? For example, growing muscle. Do you think muscle seems to grow the same as people often say that you need carbs?
It actually grows better now without the carbs.
100%.
Simple as it's a simple answer. Because I'm constantly providing the nutrients for muscle growth. Whereas
Without the
carbs just used
anti-nutrients.
to make me swell up and inflammation, you name it. Playing rugby, you get injured. I'm fortunately I've kept my good looks, um, but being injured were bad. I mean, I broke my left ankle 3 times, my right ankle 4 times.
Wow.
So I literally used to have to sit. This was when I was carb fed, obviously. Sit on the edge of the bed and literally crack my ankles to get them working, and then go and train and play. But you then end up with hydrocortisone, which then does its own damage as well. Which is, when people go and have shoulder injuries, all this sort of stuff. They usually say 2 injections a year is probably the maximum. I'd basically not take any at all because I think it's more harmful than beneficial. Um, but I used to have probably two a week.
Wow.
They used to take me to different hospitals just to keep me playing. So on that side of it, you learn when you get older and you finish that they're not really bothered about your health. They're actually bothered about forming and whether they win or not, and that's it. And that was a semi-professional. That wasn't even full professional. So it was still a semi-professional sport when I played it back in the day in the 80s.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And it's incredible what we push our bodies for in order to achieve certain things. And that
Yeah,
isn't, and I'm not saying that to stop people achieving goals, because I think it's important to have goals and to achieve things. I mean, I'm glad I did bodybuilding, but it's not healthy. Like it's, the training, the resistance training, fantastic, but the constant dieting, and it was proper dieting. You're talking incredibly restricting to get down to 2% body fat. That's not healthy, and then bloating back up when you binge after and so on and so forth. But same as you, I'm sure that despite all of those things, you wouldn't change them, because it's those
no,
things that have taught you, from those mistakes you've learned, and now you're able to teach other people. So I don't think we would change anything that we've done. Is that fair to say?
no. I wouldn't change it. It's the hardest part for me. We just had a reunion not so long ago, about a month and a half ago, and all the guys that I played with look old. I mean, really old. It's like it's strange because I don't see myself like that. And they're all bent over, injuries, uh, inflammation. They're still drinking pints of beer and eating all sorts of crap. And I just look at them and think, what are you doing to yourself? And there's a couple of lads that I played with that aren't here anymore,
Mm.
purely for those sort of reasons. But it's quite eye opening when you meet people who you used to go to school with, and they comment on how well you look, and all that sort of stuff. But in a lot of cases, they're not actually interested in changing it themselves until something happens, which is why I changed. A bit similar health incidents and things like that. Pretty much when I nearly ended up in a box, being really unhealthy, meningitis, all this sort of stuff, just compounding things one after another. Um, and everything was geared to eating vegetables, eating fruit, doing the 5 a day. Don't do weight training, don't do this, go running.
Don't eat red meat.
Um, yeah, leave red meat. Yeah, don't eat red meat at all, otherwise you'll have a heart attack and die. Um, and I was just given so much garbage information, and I was on so much medication at the time, literally about 13 different tablets for different things. And I just thought, I literally, you get to a stage where you think you're just gonna break down. And it actually happened on a treadmill, first time back in a gym. I couldn't actually walk at 2.5 miles per hour on a 2% incline. Bearing in mind I'd been a semi-professional sport person, and I just started crying, literally just tears coming down my face. And I thought, I can't carry on like this. And I literally went cold turkey on the tablets and everything, which wasn't an advisable thing to do at the time. But it was the only way I could do it. And I literally went cold turkey. And it was the best thing I ever did, you know.
Yeah, I
So
agree. I think it's when I look at my journey, I'm glad that I went through those things, because
yeah,
it's taken that. I think if I had an easy ride, I wouldn't be. There's no way I just would have continued. And I think that's the problem with most of the youngsters today, is that you see these influencers on Instagram trying to
yeah,
give these 50 and 60-year-olds advice on health and well-being. It's like, well, you're in your 20s, you're eating half healthy, like, you're okay, you're on carbs and you believe in carbs, but you're restricting processed foods. You're active every day. Your DNA at that age is designed to keep you as fit and healthy as it can for the progression and survival of the human race. When you get to 25 and beyond, 25, 26, that's when things start to change. And that's when the body's like, it doesn't matter, because you can throw an awful lot at the body, and the body will just deflect because it needs to survive. It needs the human race to survive, to procreate, and to reproduce. And then it's, this is why we see people in their 30s then, isn't it? Oh, now I need, middle age spread. I'm getting older, and they just accept that their life is now on a decline, and it couldn't be further from the truth if they just change what they consumed. But you see these influencers, don't you, with 20-year-old influencers, some like 18, 19, and they're taking on clients in there. What do you know about male physiology and biology, and
Yeah.
it's almost laughable. I respect what they're trying to do, but but they're teaching the wrong thing with high carb, because they're completely anti red meat and high fat, and they're just going on the standard narrative. A few more questions. Where are we? So we've got, Mika says, volume training appears to be recommended a lot. Why is it still popular among trainers?
Um, High volume. I'm assuming Mika means. It's again, people jump on bandwagons. You've seen it all the time. They'll jump on a particular bandwagon where it's lengthened partials, or um, you know some other thing where they can actually bump up their algorithms to make it work. I mean, volume training were popularized many, many years ago. The old German volume training, Russians used to use it. They all used it, which is fine. But most of these guys were taking all sorts of gear. So you can do the volume if you're taking all sorts of gear. It's, so you've always got to bear in mind when people are giving out recommendations and studies, is the person natural, or are they going to be taking some synthetic hormone? If they are, then pretty much, the rest of the training program can be just about anything. You can get away with training 5 days a week if you want to. Whereas if you're working on a natural process, for me, if you're doing a split program, I would go every other day, maximum. If you were doing push pull legs, usual bro stuff. If you were doing a full body workout, I'd do it sort of Monday, Thursday, and then leave another couple of days. So you do a Friday, Saturday, and then so you do Monday, Thursday, Sunday, to give yourself time. Because the only limiting factor that we've got as people who don't eat carbohydrates is glycogen replenishment. So, in terms of the muscles, everybody thinks that they deplete all the glycogen in the muscle. It's physically impossible. You could train as hard as you possibly want to, and the most you'll ever lose will be 40%. And that's really battering yourself into the floor. So you've still got 60% left in the muscle, and then obviously, your liver kicks in and replenishes it over time. But it always prioritizes the glucose needed to keep your central nervous system running and everything else. So on that side of it, when people start pushing the volumes, you've got to look at reasons why. Volume in itself isn't, as I say, it depends what you're doing. As I said, we make going that way. These guys influence it. They're all bodybuilders. They're all on something. Some of them on way too much of something. But if you then pair it back to being natural, you just can't do it because you can't recover in time. You can't.
Mm.
You would end up in such a damaged state that the next time you went to train, you would still be training a damaged muscle, which then it just compounds everything. Recovery is
100%.
actually just as important as the actual training itself.
Oh,
So
definitely. I
provide
mean,
the
probably more
sorry, go on.
important. No, no, God,
Yeah,
it's you do the damage, it's the recovery that builds the muscle, isn't it?
exactly.
But it's
So you feed that recovery. Yeah, you feed that recovery. You put the stimulus in. You can and again when again this is where a lot of things cross over. There's a lot of guys. If you're a newbie and you've never trained before, you could lift a can of baked beans up 50 times and still gain something from it. Whereas people who have trained for a long time, or even as much as 6 months, 12 months, that's why all the gym programs are 12 weeks. train for 12 weeks and do this, train for 12 weeks and do that. It's an easy sell because giving somebody a different stimulus for 12 weeks will automatically give them some benefit, and they'll notice it. More so if they're only just starting. But if you then do the same thing again for the next 12 weeks and the 12 weeks after that and the 12 weeks after that within 12 months, they basically just become disillusioned and they just stagnate because there's no additional stimulus. So it's the training program that's wrong, and the fact that the coaches are pushing a training program that's wrong. But they're not bothered because you've paid your membership, and you've paid them for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I've nothing against coaches. It might not seem that way, but I'm against coaches giving out bullshit advice. Simple as that. And any coach that becomes a rep counter and wants to talk about what people did on a Friday or a Saturday evening while they're taking money from them, I just don't see the point. Um, you can be friends, and a lot of these guys who, I mean, I see it at my, not my just my local gym, but every gym. They always try and hook into people to be the friend, but they're only your friend when they're paying you money. When you're getting money from them, that's when they're your friend. If you were to then stop paying them, then you'll never hear from them again. Simple as. Whereas a good coach will get on with the client, strictly professional basis. They won't be counting reps. They'll watch what people do. They'll adapt the form, change positions, look at the biomechanics, look at how they're training, look at the rest intervals, the repetition timings, you name it. Even the grip, something as simple as a grip. If the grip's wrong, you're not training the muscles you're working. So there's all those different things that a good coach will do. But most of these guys that do it haven't got a clue. Like you
Mm.
said earlier, they're all in there. They literally just read a magazine or a look online and just copy what somebody else is doing.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
that's that. You know, I remember a number of years ago, a couple of younger boys that I know basically asked me for some advice, and I give them advice, and then they said, "Look, that's not what this bodybuilder says, or this bodybuilder. This is what this bodybuilder does." And exactly as you say, that bodybuilder is on a myriad of anabolics.
yeah,
And you're not on anabolics. You're not. Are you a professional bodybuilder? Is the question, because you don't
exactly.
need to be doing what they are doing isn't right for you. And as you say, any form of resistance training is going to confer benefits. And as you say, lift a tin of beans.
Yeah,
And I think that's important because it's you can literally, we get caught up on, as you say, counting reps and doing whatever else, when the reality is doing the work, making sure that the diet is right, more important than anything else, I think. Because when you are consuming generally high carb, it's grains with seed oils. Grains are incredibly powerful at blocking nutrient uptake. If you want to prevent your body's ability to utilize proteins for muscle protein synthesis, then take it with carb. You know,
yeah,
it's but yeah, you're right. Unless you are a professional bodybuilder, why would you be training like a professional bodybuilder? It just
yeah.
doesn't make sense. Um,
I'm the same thing with coaching side as well. People will go to a gym and they'll just walk into a gym and just copy what people do, or look at the side of the machine and try and copy what's on the picture at the side of the machine. How many golfers go and play golf without going for a lesson or being taught what to do? How many people drive a car
that's
without being taught what to do?
yeah.
Yeah, you all develop your own style and your own thing eventually. Nobody drives a car like they were shown, and nobody actually plays golf like a professional golfer. But they still learn the basics, and certain countries actually do that. I know in Denmark you have to pass. You get like a little logbook, and they'll sign you off on different equipment to say that you're competent at using it. I mean, I see so many guys and girls down there doing exercises which are just going to, especially in the shoulders, shoulder press machines and things like that.
Mm,
There's some really bad ones.
yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. A couple of other questions. Let's get through some of these, Sean. Where are we? So there was
Yeah,
Question from Paul. What rep range would you recommend for a 65-year-old who has had a few years off the weights
Yeah.
while sick with metabolic disease?
Basically, it's a similar kind of thing to the CNS because you don't want to overload your recovery. That's the key thing. But the muscles respond. Um, I'm stimulating reps. There's a it's whatever that is. But really, if you're pushing yourself to fatigue, people think that you've got to use lightweight reps. Light weights, lots of reps. Personally, I don't see the point. I think it has value in medicinal recovery, like BFR training and things like that, where you can stimulate muscle repair to some degree using those techniques. But for me, what I found is that if you're working initially, you've got to find the the key things that I work off is the first one is I use time under tension. That doesn't build muscle. So that's we'll get that out of the way. But what it does is it allows you to feel the muscle that you're actually supposed to be training. So using that time under tension principle, if you can't feel the muscle that you're training, then you're actually doing the exercise incorrectly. So you can actually then work around that to feel the muscle so that you do feel it correctly. But you're doing that with a light weight, but in a safe environment. So you actually go to failure, you go to volitional failure, but you're doing it with an ultralight weight that won't cause you any damage. The biggest problem for most people is they use too heavier weights, wrong technique, wrong form, and they end up getting injured. The next phase is to actually find your working weight. You only need 3 reps of each weight to do that. So let's say, for instance, you were doing I don't know, bicep curl. You start off with 5 kilos on a bicep. It might be 2.5. It depends who it is. And then what you do is you do 3 reps. You put the weights down. You might do 5 kilos. Put the weight if it were easy. 7.5 kilos if it were still easy. And this is where the problem happens in the gym is that most of the gyms go up in 2.5 kilo increments, which is way too high for a small muscle group.
Mm.
So I use micro weights, which basically are 0.25, 0.5, 0.75 in increments right the way through that range. So once you get to a point where you're starting to struggle on 3 reps, you might only have to go 0.25. Now that then becomes your working weight for your phase 3, which is what I run is like a phase 3 program. And what you then do is you do 60%, 75, and 90% of that. And you do 3 reps of each, and then you'll do your working set with the full weight. So once you've done the full weight, you might get 5 reps, you might get 6, you might get 8. It doesn't really matter in terms of the reps that you do. You then take a rest after that and you do the same weight again. I'm not in for drop sets because to me, once the muscle is fried, it's fried. And all you're actually doing is eliciting more damage to the muscle, which then takes you longer to recover again. So by waiting 2 or 3 minutes after you've done your main set, you then do the same. You'll only get maybe 3 or 4 reps on the second set, but it's always with the same weight. And that then, once that's done, that's finished. That's it. So it's literally doing probably what 10, 19 reps. 19 reps in total, including your 3 warm-up sets and your 2 main sets. 19, 20 reps max is all you need. If you're progressing it in a logical format. You can do it with more reps. It just means that you're effectively doing more work than what you actually need because the only effective reps are the ones at the end anyway. But it's not to say that you can't do that. I do have one guy who is more into he's an endurance guy, and he prefers. He says he feels it better using 8 to 10 reps. So you've always got to work. It goes back to my physiology teacher at uni, Matt Haynes. He always says it's specificity in everything. So no matter what you think it is or what you want to do, it's always what the person thinks. So you've got to have a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah, 100%. Eleanor says, when you are accessing your own body fat, does it provide nutrients to sustain your body, like in a prolonged fast, for example?
Um, I think you'd be more better at answering that than myself. But
So
you know,
yeah, I think to some degree, but most of that's just going to be utilized for energy, isn't
yeah,
it? It's
yeah,
beta oxidation and ketone production. I think it's to a degree, but I think these things are not on-off switches, are they? And we
no,
look at them as one or the other, but it's always a balance between
yeah,
a number of things. And I think when we look at cortisol being high and low, for example, cortisol is
yeah,
always there. It's insulin's always there, glucose is always
yeah,
there. Glutamate and GABA, all of these things are always there. It's just they're not on-off switches. So I think to a degree, but to be honest, most of that is going to be used for energy production, or as you say, restored,
reabsorb. Yeah, if you're
reabsorbed
not using it, yeah.
as the body
I know
fat.
for the, I know it's same with the mTOR AMPK, exactly the same thing. It's like a dimmer switch. One's up, one's down. Exactly the same thing.
100%. Um, so we've got a comment from Ant. I'm also about to get back into the gym and would like to hear your advice on a good all-round program to get going on. I have done one set to failure style programs before, once a week, and 5x5 type programs,
Yeah,
3 times a week.
yeah,
That always seemed to be a bit much, and I didn't produce much over the once a week to failure type of program. 54-year-old.
yeah. I mean, basically, the program that I run is designed just purely for that basis. I mean, anybody can have a look at it, see if. I mean, I can explain it. Put it out on the thing, on the school group if anybody's interested. Um, but the key thing for me with all this, the 5-5 program works, but a lot of these programs tend to be powerlifting programs. So they're good for strength. The downside for me is when people are using barbells all the time. If you're using a barbell, especially for bicep curls, shoulder press, even bent over rows, things like that, anatomically you're not in the right position. So you're having to make compromises all the time. Whereas with dumbbells, the actual scapular plane on which that you should be working on is actually always in line. And once you get that, you see an anatomical position in a diagram, we don't stand like that. That's just purely for reference, for medicinal reference. So we actually, most people stand with the hands internally, the hands and humerus internally rotated, shoulders internally rotated, because of how we live. We drive internally rotated. We sit and eat as meals, and even sat at the computer now, we're sat with us shoulders slightly forward, internally rotated.
Mm.
Now, the biggest problem with that is that when guys, especially the coaches, the online people, they always miss one key thing. And it's always about scapular retraction, scapular protraction, elevation, depression, whatever. And that is important, but it's not for me, it's not the primary driver. So the scapula has to move, and it has to be able to move efficiently when you're actually lifting weights. But the thing that controls that, the thing that's actually the only thing that's connected to your upper torso is the clavicle, a sternoclavicular joint. Now that if that breaks, cyclists, anybody that falls and puts the hand down, all the right side, left side of your body is completely useless. It's of no use whatsoever. So if you actually feel your clavicle and push your clavicle back, you actually, you retract your clavicle. That's a totally different thing to actually sort of pulling your scapula back. When you pull your scapula back, all your traps and everything just knit up into a big lump at the back. Now what that does, that brings your arms in and pushes your hands out, which is actually not a good stacking position to actually bench press or something like that. Whereas if you actually push your clavicle back, your scapula automatically rotates, but your hands stay stacked over the top of each other anatomically. So it's the clavicle that determines that position. People can try it. You can actually, if you actually put your hand on your clavicle and you feel your chest, your pec muscles, once you push your clavicle back, you can feel it. You can actually feel it going into, full retraction. And then the same as you're going forward, people just push with their hands and their arms, even more so. So if I'm, you can actually, when I'm pressing, they're just basically just doing this with their hands and their arms. It does nothing. Whereas if I'm in that position and I pull that back with my shoulder, keep my arm straight, you can see how much I'm moving, but my elbow's not even bending. So the clavicle traction, retraction, whatever, that's the same principle both for benching, especially for a chest, because if you're in that position and your clavicle moves forward, your arms come together in the middle. So straight away, if you actually do, if people actually do that and feel it, push your clavicle forward as far as you can and feel your chest. It'll actually be fully contracted with no weight at all. And one of the easiest ways to actually feel that is on like a TRX, the TRX bands. So your TRX bands, your hands will automatically be in this sort of position. You'll go into full retraction. Scapula will automatically, just all you have to think about is your clavicle going back and your clavicle going forward. That's all the rest of it just moved on its own.
100%.
But none of the other guys actually use that.
Yeah, love that. Couple of questions. We've got a few other questions. So no more questions, please, guys. We've got plenty to take us up to the hour. I've lost where I am. Where are we? So Rich says, will you tell us a little bit about your app and your YouTube plans, please, Sean?
Yeah, it's that's the one thing. I'm not trying to jump on other people's programs, and obviously, I'm not doing it to. I'm fortunate enough that I don't have to do it to make a living in that sense. I'm doing it purely the lowest possible. The school group and obviously what you've done, just made me want to do it. So it's literally just a school group just based on resistance training. That's it. So the whole idea was then if anybody wanted to do the nutrition side, I will push them onto this. To push them onto this program because I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's backside, but I've learnt more on this channel, on this forum, than what I did doing 3 years of uni nutrition. So it's you've got to acknowledge. I'm the same when it comes to training. The time under tension thing. Dave Crossland got me back onto that. I mean, Dave's actually huge. He went in like 26-inch arms. I mean, you might have heard of him. He does eval now. He does all the blood testing. But Dave got me back into an even keel where he got my hormones levels right, but also got me back into feeling I'd lost out the ability to feel the weights, and he got me back into that. So I incorporate that, but I always give him credit for it because he was the one that got me back into that. Even though I'd used it before, it made the biggest thing. But yeah, the YouTube side is just doing the same. He's literally showing people the program step by step. I'll actually run through it 2 weeks in advance of everybody else, and because I do that anyway, I'll run the phases. It's a cyclical program, so there's no need for a deload and all that cobblers. Basically, you run the program, you then recycle it, start again, but at a higher level. So you're just basically going up a set of steps. You get to a point, you go back to the beginning, reinforce the positionings and all that sort of stuff. If you're happy with it, you can bypass phase one, but then you go back into your 3 phase and the actual program itself at a higher level. So you're constantly progressing, and people say, the hard part is when people are on machines at the gym, like I mentioned before, they'll get to a certain point where they'll think, oh, I've hit 50 kilos, but I can't hit 55. I'll just do more reps. But the more reps don't build more muscle. It's only the addition of the weight that actually builds the muscle and makes the fibers grow. So by doing that, you just basically, by using these micro progression weights, you can go up. If you go up 0.25 of a kilo and you do that for 52 weeks, then straight away you've gone up, 14, 15 kilos a year. without doing anything. That's the reason why I'm actually lifting more now than I did when I finished playing rugby at 35.
Which is incredible. And
You
what's
know,
the name of the school group, Sean?
it's just WHW I do, which is basically what, how, why I do what I do. That's
Love it.
literally what it is.
Well,
Um,
send that to me because what I'll do, I'll pop that into the comments when we
yeah,
repost this so everybody can see that. And feel free to promote that in the group by all means. And in regards to the YouTube, I think we should do a YouTube podcast, which we can maybe cross pollinate, or at least we can
yeah,
promote it from mine to yours. But we'll talk about that anyway.
yeah, cool.
Couple of other questions. We're close to the time, but we've got a couple I think we can get through quickly, Sean. Pat says,
Well,
"How do you?" Go
sorry,
on.
if anybody's got any more questions, they can just post them on and I'll answer them anyway. It's not
Perfect.
a problem.
Fantastic. So the couple of others. Pat says, "How do you measure body composition? Have you had a Hume body pod? Do you have a company or product that you recommend? I'm not a gym goer, but quite fit. 64-year-old woman. Want to build some muscle, and I want to
Yeah,
measure progress. Before you get into that, I'll show you mine. So I've
yeah.
the
I think Laura's used it.
it's yeah, that's it. So it's the
Yeah,
in body, which is the one I done yesterday. Super
yeah,
impressed with my one visceral fat and my total fat mass in my body is currently 5.1 kilos, 7.5% body fat, which was a lot lower than I was expecting, to be honest. But
good.
that I think is incredible. But this um, I believe is 99% accurate to a DEXA scan, but even this
Yeah,
has area of, I can drink water and
yeah.
jump on 2 hours later and see slightly different results. But
Well, I actually have a guy who were doing the similar thing to you, and it were a little bit of a competition. He were doing it for, can't remember which guy were doing it, but one of the influencers online, and he basically drank about 3 liters of water before he went and had a DEXA scan done. So he basically just conned the machine,
yeah,
because it literally showed up as lean body mass.
wow,
And so all these things are valuable tools, but they can be, I always use
consistency.
DEXA because it is the most accurate other than an MRI. So I will have a DEXA scan done, but the Hume machine, there's another one. I think there's about 3 or 4 different ones, and there's a new one coming out this year, which actually gives additional metrics as well, for heart rate variability and all that sort of stuff.
Mm,
Um, and they're good because all you have to do is, if you have a DEXA scan done, or even if you don't, to be fair, if you know the error is ±2%, ±3, you just build that into the equation. And as long as you see a progression going one
100%.
way or another way, you know whether you're gaining muscle or losing fat or whichever. It doesn't really matter what the absolute number is, so long as you can see that it's going in the right direction.
100%. And I think for Pat, something cheap, obviously Dex is going to be more expensive. The in body,
Yeah,
which you can find, a lot of companies and local gyms will have them, Pat, and you can
yeah,
usually get on there for like £5. In the UK, obviously, it's I know the States have in bodies also for the American friends. A lot of my clients use in body. Super cheap. DEXA, as you
yeah.
say, fantastic. MRI, but it's you pay in the money then. So I
Well, the
think for
Hume
something like
one,
that,
I think the Hume one's on offer at the moment because I think they're getting ready to launch a new model. I think that's about £170 with the discount things. I posted it on for somebody, and I think the body scan, body scan, they're also been offering like a 20% discount on Dexers. So I posted that on as well.
fantastic.
I don't get anything from that. I just posted it because it came through on my feed. So you know,
Brilliant stuff. Um, What else have we got? So Cammie's put a question about she doesn't quite understand the three sets, but I think
yeah.
Laura has gone in and explained that. But you welcome to touch base on that really quickly if you want to, Sean. She says, I didn't quite understand the 3 warm-up sets and the 2 regular sets, how exactly to do it. Uh, do you have videos on YouTube? Is
I
this
will
on
have.
what? Brilliant.
Yeah, I'll,
There we
I'll
are.
I'll basically be starting the program with the foundations. That starts on the 1st of March. The foundations goes through all the scapular alignment and anatomical positions and things like that. Especially for the, as I say, for the shoulder rotator cuff and things. Nearly everybody gets into the wrong position to
Mm,
press. And I mean, ultimately, if you were to set up correctly to do a bicep curl in the correct position, anatomical position, where your arm is actually out in front of you and off to the side with your palms facing up, that literally is the basis for every single upper body exercise that you ever do. It's
Mm.
also the basis for a squat as well.
Yeah.
So you can actually keep the same foot position, get into the anatomical position as you would to do a bicep curl, and you can then translate that onto a bench to then do a shoulder press or a bench press or anything else. It's literally the same. The only difference is where the arm articulates into a fully extended or fully compressed position.
Yeah. Love that.
You know,
Fantastic.
but I'll show all that on the videos hopefully.
Perfect. And feel free to pop them into the chat, Sean. Obviously,
Yeah.
promote the channel, pop the videos in. I think people would appreciate that. Yeah, I think that'd be very educational,
Well,
and I think it's
I'm looking to do one for Laura at the moment for press ups. So everybody
perfect.
does them the wrong way.
Brilliant. I look forward to seeing that. Um, so there's one more come in if from Sasha. If we could just touch base on
Yeah.
that. Could you please clarify your question? If you're looking for information on a specific topic or need details about something discussed in a meeting, oh, what's that? I don't understand that. It's from Sasha's note taker, so I don't know if that is yeah, don't know. Does that make sense to you? Or am I reading it
No.
wrong? No. There we are. Fantastic. Sean, let's wrap it up there. Let's end the
Okay.
recording. I think that
Thanks
has been
everybody. Appreciate it.
absolutely fantastic. Some amazing questions, super knowledgeable. And yeah, I look forward to seeing these videos. Let's get a podcast booked in. I think that'll do really well. And yeah, look forward to seeing more content in the group. But Sean,
Cool.
absolute gentleman, thank you very
Okay.
much. Let me
Thanks.